So there's a small introduction which this particular PDF has, wherein how our business and personal life gets affected by the social media presence or the internet presence that we all have, what kind of a digital footprint we leave in the outside world, how the systems are interconnected, and the data that is captured at all the ends or all the endpoints, and how it actually affects the business and personal life is given in this slide. So there you can see that without an online life is actually there is no actual presence in this world these days. So some of the essential terms that you need to know. I know that actually directly understanding these terms might be a little difficult for you, but things like vulnerability, risk, exploit, threats, payload, bot, doxing, daisy chaining. You should be aware of all these terms because whenever you read or interact within the community or read some blogs or articles outside or even this PDF, yeah, it should all make sense to you. So hack value, if you see it is something, which is the value to a hacker. Okay, something that is worth doing and it is interesting. So a value which is for a hacker might not be the same as a value to a business. So there should be a clear understanding as to when a particular resource is being accessed in a victim machine or a system or a network, that has different values to a business and a different value to a hacker. Then there is a term called zero-day attack, wherein it speaks about the vulnerabilities that have not been yet discovered, and they are being actively being used by the hackers. No one knows about them. Only when someone comes to know about them, or there is an information disclosure, on the websites, or over official emails, or some kind of a communication happens wherein people releases these this kind of people release this kind of an information of an attack, ongoing attack. Only then the vendors or the security researchers create a patch or something that can cover that vulnerability. Then if you use multiple attacks and simultaneously, or multiple exploits as part of attack over a period of days, then it would be termed as daisy chaining. If there is some kind of a personal identifiable information and you get hold of it and then you release it to public, that term is called doxing. Now, if let's say was a particular exploit and it was uh, you know being used in a particular system which now acts like a zombie. Basically, it works based on the commands which are given by a remote system somewhere, or a command and control center which is remote. Then that particular machine or a device is termed as a bot, which usually is part of an army called bot army, and it works in a synchronized manner with other bots. So you would see that on internet, if there is a launch of an attack that happens on internet with multiple devices in a distributed manner, that would happen with these kind of bots. So the term called risk is not mentioned here, but if you understand something called vulnerability and a threat, then risk would be the probability a threat has to exploit a particular vulnerability. I'm sorry, risk is the probability with which a threat would actually exploit a vulnerability. So normally when you do a risk assessment, you list down all the vulnerabilities and all of the threats, give them some kind of a score, multiply them and distribute it among the team members and see that which particular vulnerability has the highest probability of getting exploited. and you give a risk score to it. So that kind of a risk assessment is not part of this module. Just to let you know that there is a term called mitigation, and in subsequently in threat management, probably you will find methods which you can use to minimize or mitigate a risk so that a threat cannot exploit a vulnerability. So there is no system actually which is risk free, and you just try to minimize the risk as much as possible. There is no system in this world which is completely 100% risk free. So then these are some additional terms which you need to be aware of: confidentiality, integrity, availability, authenticity, and non-repudiation. So if you see, these are all attributes of information. So information, as in something which relates to a host, network, system, device, and the data which is kept there. So it's, these things need to maintain confidentiality, integrity, and availability to improve the security of that particular device or an endpoint. So if you see availability, it is always in some kind of a push and pull or a tug of war, I would say, with integrity and confidentiality. So for example, if you create a file and you encrypt it with such a great algorithm that no one can actually see it, then probably it might not be of any use. So there needs to be a balance that needs to be maintained between these three attributes, and they're also called information triads. So if you see authenticity, so authenticity is something which tells you that a particular resource belongs to a particular owner, and it is actually enforced with the help of digital signatures and some other digital information which people cannot say that, let's say there is a Windows OS and it has a particular key, then whether it is original or not. So that kind of a term, that kind of a definition pertains to authenticity. Then there is a term non-repudiation. So it's like I can deny that I did something, and we usually use digital signature to enforce it. Say you take any action digitally, then it is part of the digital infrastructure which ensures that someone cannot deny over a fact that that particular act was not performed by a person. So I hope you understand that. Okay, so we'll move on to the next slide. Yeah, so there is about information. If you see, three more important terms that we need to be aware of, and which is about security, functionality, and usability. And they actually maintain a triangle. That functionality is more about features. Say you have an email and you get features to compose an email, send an email, have a look at the sent emails. And security as to, let's say you want to log in as a particular user, then you might enable only password login, or you might enable two-factor authentication, wherein you use a RFID login, or maybe use another Google software to generate a code, while you are logging in. So something that you have, something that you can see, something that you possess, and something that you know. All of these combine and can give you more security, as well as if there are some GUI features and other utilities which makes it usable, then those things come under usability. So this kind of a balance also, again, I would say, that needs to be maintained while we talk about information security, and this also relates to the information as a whole. So in the diagram, if you see that usually the ball is tilted more towards security when we talk about information security. Okay, so that finishes off the information security overview, and now we will discuss information security threats and the types and various attack vectors. But before that, we need to know like what actually a vector means. So it's like we need to know that you must have heard in your classes as to something which has a quantity or and it has also has a direction. It's called a vector. So it does not have a mathematical connotation here, but you need to understand that attack comes from which direction. So just because it has the notion of direction with it, we call that attack is coming either from a virus, or attack can come from someone who is sneaking over a fence. Maybe someone who has cloned an RFID badge to get an access, physical access to an office, maybe, or probably someone is trying to access a machine remotely. So whether that particular direction is physical or logical, it needs to, it is called as the attack vector. So it's like, any particular thing which tells you that this particular system is going to get or can be attacked from this particular direction can be termed as attack vector. So there will be some top attack vectors we will discuss, but let us first understand as to the motives, goals, and objectives as to why people do what they do. So anything, if you have a motive and it is combined with a method, plus you know of a vulnerability, then it becomes an attack. So if a motive is bad and intention is malicious, then it can be termed as hacking, an attack which is related to hacking. So why do people actually do these kind of attacks? So maybe it is related to some money, or probably some kind of some bragging rights which someone want to gain, probably some recognition. Probably there is an ideology which someone doesn't like, or someone is doesn't like a particular business or a company for because they do not they are not in line with the cause for which a particular person exists. Say you term them hacktivists. Then there might be some kind of a need to disrupt business and its continuity. Maybe someone wants to create cause a data theft. Maybe someone wants to steal some data. Maybe there is a need to create some kind of chaos and seek attention. There might be some kind of political or religious motives. There might be some military objectives, or maybe someone wants to destroy the reputation of an organization, or maybe someone was fired from some company, and then someone wants to that person wants to take a revenge. So motives can be anything that has some kind of hack value. Can provide some kind of a value to the person who wants to attack. And when it is combined with a method and a known vulnerability or an exploitable vulnerability, it becomes an attack. So now let us discuss some attack vectors. So as I said that an attack can come from an environment which is a cloud computing based environment, or it can be some kind of an app. So it is also called advanced persistent threat, or it can be more generic way of actually infecting a particular system with a virus and worm, or maybe executing some kind of a code which is actually part of a larger ransomware. And there are new mobile threats in the wearables and IoTs. They have these kind of threats. So these are some of the information security attack vectors. So if you talk about cloud computing, so generally you would find that there are some physical locations over which some data centers have been established, and people provide services such as software, or maybe sometimes they provide platforms, and sometimes they provide infrastructure also as a service. So there are various non-related vendors who get together and try to use a common shared space, and they remotely access a data center. So the thing is that this kind of an environment poses real threat to the information, because say some if you want a software as a service, say you want an access to a database for an application that you are developing, and you want to basically create some tables, and you want to put some data which a particular web application wants to consume whenever someone wants to request from it. So now, if it is like that, then the provider of a particular database might ensure uh, that the particular database service is secure. But let's say if you want to have an environment which is a platform, let's say you want an access, you want to spin up a machine which or, with the particular operating system, say Ubuntu or any other distribution, then you are the one who are actually responsible for setting up security, and you're hardening the security of that particular operating system. Or maybe there is some particular collection of tools that will help you in designing an application, and then that is also termed as like platform which you would like to have an access to. But then also you probably as a user you would have more of the responsibility to take care of the security. And let's say if you take infrastructure as a service, wherein you yourself are setting up a lot of devices like routers, switches, and you're spinning up multiple machines, and then you will have to take care on a deeper level. So just to like, this is not a cloud computing class, but on a broader level, you should be aware that it poses really new avenues for the hackers to you know uh, make use of, for especially for malicious intentions. Then about APTs, so you might know that there are some actors which you know in a very coordinated manner they sneak into the machines without you coming to know about it, and then they slowly in the background they try to achieve the goals for which they have entered into a system. Say they would like to probably steal some data, or continuously disrupt some or the other kind of a service, or maybe remotely accessing your webcams to monitor you, or maybe remotely enabling some kind of a mic in your mobile, or PC to basically monitor you or to capture a lot of information from you. So all those things, if they are done. Now if let's say if there's one particular uh, you know uh, loophole that you have covered, even then these threats would find another way to do it. So that's why they are called persistent. So these kind of attacks are grouped as advanced persistent threats. Then there are more general way of doing it, like viruses and worms actually enable these kind of attacks. So then you might have heard in news that access to particular system or a device or a drive is blocked, and due to strong encryptions, and people actually ask money for it. So those are terms under ransomware. And this mobile threat landscape is still new, and we all still are figuring it out. So, but there is some limited information which is there in this guide that you can go through. So as I already explained, like what a botnet is. So it's like when a system is compromised and it is part of a larger net. So let's say multiple bots are there and part of a larger net, then they can combine in a combined manner. They can create a lot of havoc on internet. So yes, insider attack you should be aware of that once a person actually gets an interested person gets an access to a network or to an organization, they also can be kind of a threat or they can become an attack vector. So if you might see that there might be some emails that you get with false or illegitimate websites, people might clone some websites and fool you. If you click on those kind of links, then they might actually capture a lot of data or some important financial information from you. And if you get these kind of practices are actually part of phishing. Then there are some web application threats and IT threats, and which can these devices can be remotely be controlled, and these attacks can be performed uh, remotely by using again some kind of a control and command center. So let's move on to the next slide, next topic. So these threat categories, you would see that they're broadly classified as three. So you would see that you will have network threats, host threats, and application threats. So let's discuss them one by one. So any kind of an information that is gathered, just a second, yeah. So sniffing is like some gathering this kind of an info, and spoofing is more like posing or pretending to be someone else by changing probably the MAC address and IP address of a device. Session hijacking is taking control of someone else's session and then making use of it. Then there is man in the middle attack. Say someone is trying to probably access a wireless access point or a web server on the internet, and there is an attacker which comes in between, captures everything in between, and relays the information on both the sides. So that is called MITM. While making use of that particular information to cause some kind of an harm. Then there is DNS server and ARP poisoning. So it's like I hope you are aware of the DNS. Like, say it maintains an information or a map between the domain name and the IP addresses on the internet. So people can query it, and it is not at all illegal to do that. So that information is quite widely applicable. But let's say you get an access to that particular table, and you can actually reroute people to different websites or different locations on the internet. So someone can pose at a real Google, and you will think that probably this site is Google, and you will probably try to use it. Or maybe someone can make you land up on a fake uh, PayPal account or a bank account page, and you might give, with the help of a form, you will give some kind of financially viable information, and then people would steal it by showing some kind of an error message like that. Then there's ARP poisoning as like uh, you know if it this network cards which are there, they usually work with the logic of having a mapping between IP address and MAC addresses. So generally they look for while being on the network, they look for MAC addresses. And somehow if you are able to fiddle with this kind of a mapping, and you introduce your own device in between, and routers and switches and other devices start sending you the traffic packets which are actually meant for another device. So I hope you understand what kind of impact it will have. So that's called ARP poisoning. So it's like someone if deliberately does that. Then there are password cracking. Okay, so it's like you can guess the passwords, or you can crack them with the help of other tools once you have access to the system. Then there are denial of service attacks. So it's like you can make use of all the computing storage and the processing power of a machine and make it unusable. So that would be termed as denial of service. Or maybe there is a web server which has a limitation of number of connection of clients, and you actually load it with so many requests that it becomes non-functional. Then that is also termed as denial of service. And there are some other compromise key attacks and firewall and IDS attacks that we would probably discuss more about them in the labs while we configure some kind of rules, and whenever the course demands configuring an IDS, we'll do that. So then there are threats which relate to a host. So a host might have a malware, and even if you footprint it and find out a lot of information, that is also a threat. You could do again, you could do some password attacks on it and denial of service attacks on it, and maybe you could leave some kind of a payload which results in some arbit code execution. That is also a threat, which pertains to host. And what normally happens is that uh, you actually log in into a particular host or a target with a normal privileged user, and then to achieve your objective, you have to now and then have to escalate your privileges. So that is called privilege escalation. That is also categorized under host threats. Then you might want to leave a particular backdoor in a machine wherein you just don't want to uh, you know alert the users or the owner of the system, but you want to leave some kind of a pathway for you to come back again and again. So that is called a backdoor and categorized as backdoor attacks and is a threat. Then there are obviously some kind of physical threats, such as if there is an earthquake or there's a flood, or maybe someone get an access to your laptop and breaks it, or a mobile phone and all that. So that comes under physical threats. Then there are threats which are related to application. So you know that there are, like in our daily use, we or in our daily life, we use a lot of applications, right? So there are servers, office applications, we use browsers, media players, apps on mobile phone, all of that. So, but while developers are actually coding for these applications, they might not properly validate the inputs. You know, they might not have taken care of all the bad inputs that could go inside the application. Let's take example of probably a login screen wherein someone keys in the username, and probably along with the password someone has not validated it for some 100 strings or 300 strings, and that particular string is read by the application, and it goes and happily overwrites the surrounding memory area, and which results in some kind of an arbit code execution which overwrites the which fills up the stack. So that is like buffer and it's an example of causing a buffer overflow. So then there are some authentication and authorization attacks which are possible, and they are also grouped under application threats. So authentication is something which deals with the identification, and wherein it could be a combination of things. Okay, and once a particular user is identified, then that particular user is given one or more privilege to modify a particular file or to create files and all that. Then there are attacks which are possible through security misconfiguration and information disclosure. or maybe someone is trying to take advantage of a broken session. Buffer overflow I've already mentioned. Then there are cryptographic attacks. Say you implemented some weak algorithm to encrypt your data, and that can, if even if some attacker gets access to the encrypted string or the cipher text, they can go on the internet and decrypt it with the help of some easily available tools online. So those would be termed as cryptography attacks. And that information, this kind of an information is actually captured during footprinting, or while doing while using OSINT methods. So people go use and have a look at the website source code and find out whether what kind of a queries they would probably send to the application, and application would happily give it, send it to the database, and the database is vulnerable to one particular, has one particular vulnerability, and this particular string would result in some kind of an information disclosure, and it will dump some kind of information on the web page. So that can be termed as, that is called as SQL injection. Phishing, I have already explained that usually you get some kind of an email or a message wherein a link is not legitimate, and it makes you land over a particular page which is actually not legal. Then obviously, if these application sometimes do not have proper error handling and exceptions management. So once you start probing these systems in the scanning phase, which is a pre-attack phase, so at that time you would probably see some more examples, and there might be some examples in the labs also. So generally, these categories are there, but you would see that still some of them can be classified under people, process, and technology. So it's like this social engineering kind of a thing is actually people related threat. Then if there is a particular way in which you are conducting business, and it has some or the other kind of a loophole which can be used by a malicious actor, then that would be grouped under process. And any kind of technologies that you are using these days is like every 3-4 months there are a lot of frameworks and technologies which people are not aware of, and developers are new and they're not that experienced. So there's a possibility of uh, them making some kind of an error which ultimately becomes a bug and can be identified as a vulnerability. Let's move on to the next topic, which discusses types of attack on a system. So I hope you have an understanding of a system, which is quite actually a loose term, wherein one particular machine can also be called as a system. A group of machines also can be called a system. A group of devices can also be called as a system. So, but generally you would see that the terms such as operating system or web application servers and all those things, then other applications, they are actually called as systems. So if you discuss attacks which are related to operating system, then you would see that buffer overflow vulnerabilities are there, and if those operating systems have not been patched as per the latest build releases for an operating system, then they might result into someone exploiting them and gaining an access to it. Then things like web applications, the servers, other databases or networks, if they have not been configured properly or with the allowed experience, then that might also result into some kind of an attack. Then there are application level attacks wherein the examples like cross-site scripting is there, that someone probably clicked a picture and posted on. I gave this example in the previous session also. So it's like they posted it on the internet, or maybe someone sent you a image which has some kind of a malicious code in it, or maybe an attachment, and which causes some kind of a arbit code execution, which results in that. Then that is termed as cross-site scripting. Generally, it is related to over the web. If you are accessing a website and opening an image actually results into this kind of a an activity, or someone is able to steal or manipulate kind of a data with the help of the code execution which happens on your system, then that is cross-site scripting. I've already explained SQL injection, middle in the man in the middle attack, session hijacking, and denial of service. So all these attacks are application level attacks. Then there is a category of shrink wrap code attacks, wherein, let's say, someone has actually delivered a particular library and built the default configurations, and also instructed you to actually change it, but let's say you haven't, then that particular information also can be harmful, and can be, if it might lead to some kind of a vulnerability, and can be utilized by a bad actor. So those are termed as shrink wrap code attacks. So let's move on to the next slide. You can have a look at these examples which are there in the PDF. So this widely used term these days is of an information warfare, wherein people capture a lot of information, which is actually not an illegal thing to do these days. And there are a lot of tools and websites over the internet which you can make use of to collect as much as information as possible about possible targets, to basically narrow your focus and decide as to which direction you want to take. So if you want to be, belong to a particular team which relates to strengthening your systems, or a network, or a host, then you would do activities which are related to prevention of these attacks, or you would probably set up some kind of an alert system or detection mechanism. So, or if you would be there on the offensive side, then you would like to probably simulate these kind of attacks. So, as an ethical hacker, you would have to take one of the sides, but in reality, in outside world, organizations against organizations, nations against nations, probably individuals against individuals, whenever they make use of this information against each other, it is termed as information warfare. And yes, there are times when people actually do espionage activities to probably release some products before their competitors can do, that have like business motives, or to have competitive advantages over the opponents. That is also information warfare. Okay, so now let's go and understand the hacking concepts, and then probably after that ethical hacking concepts. Okay, okay. So I'll just glide through hacking concepts, and this is more or less the same information which you have heard till now, and but more detail is there in this PDF. So again, like, what is hacking, and what modification of a system means, and it leads to a business loss. How is it different? What who's can be termed as a hacker? So someone who has computer skills, or like a hobbyist, or wants to just probe without doing illegal or illegal things, or want to probably do. Some have malicious intent, some do not. So there are basically three. You must have heard black hats, white hats, and gray hats. But there are additionals like suicide hackers, which do not actually bother even if you catch them, and whether they go to jail or some kind of they face some kind of punishment, they don't bother. So these kind of people are called suicide hackers. Then there are people who just get hold of some kind of a utility on the internet and they don't know how to use it, but just they find some examples and they try to use it. So they are called script kiddies. Then there are cyber terrorists who are motivated by religion or their own political beliefs, and state sponsored hackers are there. So they want to gain access to the top secret information and all. Then there are hacktivists, then who are there for some kind of a social cause. So you might see some examples on the internet that someone is defacing a website and all. So those are people who are called hacktivists. So these are the like general hacker classes, if you would like to term them. Then, if you discuss the hacking phases, I already explained it in the information session, but it is like first is recce, I mean reconnaissance. Then you gain an access into the system, and once you gain the access, you actually maintain the access. And then once you maintain the access and you use it for the, probably you would like to come back again and again to that particular system, then you would leave a backdoor, and also you will clear the tracks. So these are generally 5 phases in which, while clearing the tracks, if you are doing it for official activity, you might actually do some kind of an analysis and patch the system again. Okay, and probably repeat these steps over the time again and again to keep improving the security of a system. So scanning is, it's a pre-attack phase. It's like more of a planning. You probe the system for vulnerabilities, and once those are there, you extract the information, from other device like on OSs, device types, like how long the system has been up, and all those things. Then more detail on gaining access. So once you have an access, you try to escalate the privileges, and then you perform activities such as password cracking or session hijacking. So once you have the access, you have the ownership on the system, then you would actually try to maintain it with the help of backdoors and rootkits or Trojans. And then over a period of time, you will keep exploiting it. Or probably you would want to use it for launching further attacks. Okay. So then once you've maintained the access, you would probably want to hide, the information which can lead to that particular disclosure that someone actually sneaked into the system and did some activities. So you would probably try to delete some kind of logs or other evidences which are there to avoid the suspicion. Then that is termed under clearing attacks. Sorry, clearing tracks. Okay, so with this background, probably you can have a look at ethical hacking concepts. So why is it there and why it is important? So the difference is that hacking probably can have malicious intention, but ethical hacking is to there with good intentions and to improve the security of the system. And ethical hacking is not illegal because it always happens with the permission of the concerned authorities if you are doing it in an organization or the owner of the system. So why is it necessary or not? Yes, it is necessary because you want to always remain ahead of the bad guys, and you want to uncover all the vulnerabilities which are there, most vulnerabilities which are there. You want to safeguard the data, and you want to enhance the awareness around you, your own awareness, and the awareness of the people who are their employees in an organization. So generally, all of these activities result into improving the security posture of a company. So yes, that it is necessary. These are some of the more adequate reasons which are listed here. So you can go through these. So some scopes and limitations of ethical hacking. So it's like normally it depends on an organization to define a scope. So an activity needs to begin with some kind of a scope and it needs to follow the best practices. So they might actually list down the methodologies and technologies that you want to use and that are permissible to identify the risks, and also some documentations are created to the assessment documents are created. Then these are some technical and non-technical skills that are expected out of an ethical hacker. So someone who has knowledge on modern operating systems, the latest ones, and almost those same tools and skills which are generally used by bad guys. So people should be aware of those tools and skills. So someone has to be a computer expert, should have knowledge on security areas, and should be highly technical. And some non-technical skills are like to quickly learn and should have strong work ethics, should be committed to the security policies of a company, and needs to have an awareness of local laws and standards. So generally, whenever you get an assessment work as an ethical hacker, organizations would automatically take care of and they will follow regulations and would take care of security laws and standards. You need not to be at a level of a lawyer, but at least you should be aware of basic things in as far as security laws and standards are concerned. So once you gain experience, and probably these laws and standards would guide that what activities can be done and what activities cannot be done, as an ethical hacker. So then there is a slide on information assurance, which you can, I think it's more of a theory which you can probably read yourself, but it deals with again those same information triad that I mentioned: integrity, availability, confidentiality, and authenticity. So what steps can be taken and how it can be become part of a training and all is mentioned in this document. Usually, any management program actually deals with reducing the risk in a system by following some of the other guidelines or frameworks. So some of them have been mentioned here. So I think the ones that I went through were, some popular frameworks like PCI DSS, ISO 27001 to 27002, CIS critical security standards, and NIST. So you can have a look at these uh, frameworks, which will actually let you know that in the overall picture where the particular activities are performed, like as an ethical hacker, where you stand and what kind of a role you are playing in a bigger picture. So generally you would see that all of the activities are guided by security policies on the top and also overseen by compliance and governance on the right side. Okay. So, an enterprise information security architecture is something probably is a little more important, and it helps an organization to detect and recover from these, breaches in real time. So, but still, it happens with a lot of, device setups and intrusion detection systems, and there are processes and principles, and there are some models which are there and which are followed. So please have a look at this once. Then security is usually zoned. Yeah, this is just text. I'll walk you through the diagram which is there, which shows the different zones. But you can see that data is the first and the crown jewel, you can say, the most important part of that is what we're trying to protect, like information. And another layer is application. The next layer is host. Then a host is actually inside an internet network, and then there is a physical some kind of a parameter around this internal network, and some kind of an isolation is given to it from the outside world. Then there is a physical zone, okay, wherein gates, guards, dogs, maybe all of these actually guard a particular building or a data center or an office, and they are all governed by policies, procedures, and awareness which there and exist in a system. So this is an example of defense in depth, and these layers have information on these zoning, which was mentioned in the previous page. Then before actually enforcing anything in a company or an organization, you need to have you need to define security policies. So these are some of the goals that are discussed, and all of these are actually some or the other way are related to protect the resources which are of value. Okay, and they're all part of information security management programs, and the ultimate aim is to reduce the risk of these particular resources being used, like being part of some kind of a theft or a misuse or some kind of a disclosure. Okay. So generally, you would find that some policies which are not those that do not have any restrictions are called promiscuous policies, and the one that forbids everything is called paranoid policy. In between, you would find some level of permission. If some some small level of attacks are allowed, then they fall under permissive policy. And if it has provisions of blocking all the services and providing maximum security, then those kind of policies are classified under prudent policies. So these things are quite important from the exam perspective. So these are some of the examples of the policies which deals with access controls, user accounts, uh, remote access which is given to outside users, then general information protection, any special access which is needs to be given to a particular user, managing the firewalls. So these policies are some kind of guidelines which can be passed along. Even if employees leave the company, then these policies can be followed by other employees. And generally, you would see that the training and awareness programs make use of various distribution methods to make people aware of these policies. So you have a policy for network connection and email security. Then there is a general acceptable use policy, which is there. So as an employee, whenever you join an organization, you might have to sign some kind of documents, and people or the HR would probably ask you to go and sign these kind of documents which mention these policies. There might be some kind of an orientation program wherein you would be made aware of these policies. So there's a workplace policy. This also, I think, come under HR only. So privacy and workplace policy come under HR. So they make you aware of that. These are some of the important steps. So whenever you want to define a security policy, you first perform risk assessment. Then you understand the standard guidelines from other organizations as well as what is there and what other people in the community are following. You include the senior management, you set clear penalties for if someone wants to violate or someone violates them. Then you create a final version, you read it, sign it, and understand the policy. then you enforce it. Once you enforce it, then you can train your employees, and regularly you need to review and update these policies. This slide discusses some of the implications of the enforcement of these policies from HR. You can read it. So yeah, if you understand that how physical security is actually related to the protection of assets, you would see why it is important. Uh, you know, Internet is one thing, or online it is one thing, but actually the data or the resources are there in some kind of a data center, or they have a physical location. So generally, these are protected by guards or some kind of safeguards which help in protecting them from any sabotage or damage or theft. So you should be aware of that, and it provides one particular domain, and it's a different domain altogether. So as a CH, you probably would have to understand these. If at all there is an interaction with the target required, then you can go in person and interact with probably a guard as part of official exercise itself. So you can probably go interact with people and understand what kind of an environment is there around a data center or a company, and probably suggest as part of assessments, you can probably suggest what a company can do to remove these kind of threats. So these are some physical security control which are there. Yeah, I think you can go through these. So yeah, I think there is a slide. Yeah, that's great. So this is a matrix which is about risk. It mentions uncertainty, the probability and likelihood, and the possible consequence or an impact which a particular exploitation can have. So these are some of the risk levels, and the probabilities have been mapped with the consequences. So this is of quite an importance, but have a clear understanding on vulnerability and a threat before you go through this. So this is the formula for actually calculating the value of a risk. So these, though it mentions only multiplication, so but the values of score, say 1 out of 10, as per the definitions that are there, or the standard procedure which is there in a company, you would probably give some kind of a number to a threat or a vulnerability and multiply them with an impact value to calculate the risk score. So these are the phases in which the risks are managed. First they're identified, then they're assessed, then they're treated, then they're tracked, and then they're reviewed. Okay. So these are some of the key roles which I mentioned as per the roles of people that if you're a chief information officer, what you are responsible for. If you are some system owner or information owner, what you are responsible for. Then if you are a functional or a business manager, what you are responsible for. Those responsibilities have been listed down under this table. So you can have a look. So this topic is quite important, which is threat modeling. It's also a risk management assessment approach. So which is like you capture the data, organize it, and then analyze it. And basically you define security objectives. Then you identify the components and the data flows between them. And then you list down all the threats and their details. What kind of a control scenario would probably define for a particular threat, and then you would categorize the vulnerabilities and then give those scores to come out with a particular model. Okay. So incidents will always be there in an organization, and there is a set process and a procedure to actually manage it. So again, it follows the same kind of steps, wherein it is identified, analyzed, then prioritized by IT teams or SOCs. Okay, and then they are resolved. And I would say incidents are all normally handled. Okay, so any reports or detection or any logs that are created actually serve as a resource for handling other incidents in future. So incidents will always be there. So there has to be some kind of a set defined procedure to manage them. So the details of this kind of a management is given in this page, and a process is there. So where you can say that preparation is always most important, and then how would you actually respond and contain it, whether for investigate further investigation is required or not. So that all falls as part of this particular process. Okay, and then there are some post incident activities also which are listed under this section. So this particular slide lists down all the responsibilities of an incident response team. Okay, so most of it deals with the reviewing, developing and reviewing, and then improving them. Uh, and especially when a particular incident has happened, then some kind of a modification of a particular step or a procedure might happen. So it's basically adds on to your learning over a period of time. Okay, let's go to the page which has laws, regulations, and laws. You can go through this SI, EM architecture, behavior analytics. So these types of access control, it's theory, but they might not be as important right now, but they would have their importance while we do some labs. At that time, it will be great. Okay. So AI and ML and cybersecurity. So you can see that there are two types of machine learning, basically unsupervised and supervised. So whenever a data is but captured, you know, it is classified, and then some predictions can be made by doing normal regression, or probably using DMA methods and clustering to actually understand various threats. And machine learning is actually quite useful in understanding zero-day attacks. Like even before them occurring, people might get some kind of a preventive alerts, and they can prepare their defenses in advance. So this is also very important. And there are many tools that are there which make use of AI and ML. So just have a look at this. So this method of evaluating the information of a system and or a network, and then simulating these kind of attacks, which might be invoked by bad guys, is termed as penetration testing. So any security measures that are there and they're analyzed, for designing these weaknesses, technical flaws, and vulnerabilities. Okay, and you have to always remember that the note taking and preparing documentation will help you a lot. So while getting certified as well as in professional life, so that is quite important. So never please shy away from that, and it is good that if you make use of existing template systems to create these reports. So that will give you general idea of as to how reports are created, and you need to use some or the other kind of software. Otherwise, you can use notepads also to create your reports. So that this is not like the normal usual Word documents that we have had, or PDFs. Something which you can go through very easily and in a faster manner. So yes, penetration testing is important because you always want to be ahead of bad guys, and as a CEH you might also be part of penetration testing, but the scope of a particular exercise will always be limited. And you, as a penetration tester, you might actually be part of a red team. You might be a red teamer. So there is this particular diagram gives a difference between an audit, an assessment, and penetration testing. So you can have a look at this also. Yeah, so there are always two sides. People who are defending the systems are blue teamers. People who are attacking the system are red teamers. This term is actually derived from old military terms, wherein people used to pose as attackers and go and test their own defenses to see whether enemy can actually seek in through some weak portion of the borders or something. So just have a look at it, and there are people who are experts in both, but generally as a beginner you would probably have to take one side initially. So either you can become a blue teamer or you can become a red teamer. That you have to identify with your own behavior and inclination. So the penetration testing is of black box, white box, and gray box type. So under white box, you have the complete knowledge of the infrastructure and tools, but black box is more external. You need not have too deep knowledge of a system, but you figure that out over a period of time. And then if you have the limited knowledge, then the activities that you would do to test the system would fall in the gray box. So these are the phases. So planning phase is like pre-attack phase, then the attack phase, and the post-attack phase. So generally, it has all those 5 steps that I actually already told you. They have been just grouped and classified with different names. Yeah, so you need to see that these are some various industry standards you should be aware of. So it's like Open Web Application Security Project is OWASP. Then this testing methodology, which is like a peer review methodology, and it is performed for high quality security tests. So it's there, and then security system security assessment framework is there. So just have a look at these. If you want to join communities also related with these frameworks, and then you can go on the internet and probably join their Discord channels or probably their IRC channels. And I think EC Council equity methodology needs to have, you need to have some kind of a paid account to access it. So I think Vikas might know more properly. Then there are some laws and standards. So this all credit card industry follows this PCI DSS standard, like all banks and credit cards and debit cards are issued. These wallets that you have these days, they actually follow this kind of a standard to regularly monitor and carry out various security procedures by building and maintaining their networks, and also like safeguarding and maintaining the security of their systems. So just have a look at this. Then generally you would see that people get, yeah, I mentioned this ISO, 2001 and 2013. So all of the organizations strive to achieve this kind of certifications. So, but the normal difference that you need to understand is between certification and accreditation. So if someone has actually verified set procedures and methods in an organization with respect to a particular standard, and they have and they have signed it off, let's say, then it is called certification. And if that particular certification has been approved by the management teams, then it is called accreditation to that certification. This is the normal term that you should be aware of. And further details on ISO IC, you can actually go through this PDF to understand it. Generally, it deals with the people, process, and technology, and obviously resources that you are trying to protect in an organization. Then all details that are related to personal identifiable information that are related to health, and it is more you know I think European and American tilted term. So it's like there people are protected with this act when but if you work with companies who are working with the American or European companies, you might have to sign these kind of documents and follow their procedures and policies. So this would probably help as to what kind of an information can be protected, what kind of information can be shared, and what standards you need to follow while working on a project. So it will help. So please go through this, but it is related to health information of a person. Then all share, you must be aware that all investment and business related activities are governed by this Sarbanes-Oxley Act. It has these titles which is mentioned. Okay, so it's like it defines everything which could actually come under Criminal and Fraud Act, and what can be termed as a white collar crime. It has all these definitions. What is a corporate tax return? So under these separate titles, it defines the rights of an auditor. It tells like what is a financial disclosure. So knowing these particular terms will actually make you more aware. And if you do some kind of an activity or a project with investment related company, then this particular act will be very useful to understand various roles and the standard procedures. Then you have DMCA. So it's like, let's say, as I mentioned, that non-repudiation kind of a term. So if someone who ensures, the legality of a particular digital asset, or someone who make it possible, then it's DMCA. You can just go through this, and then this Fizma is also there. Yeah, like until and unless you actually work with companies who are United States related, you might not have to go through all of these URLs. Okay, but you can see like the Patent Amendment Act in India and IT Act in India are quite useful. You can have a look at these URLs. The Ministry of Information and MIT government. Yeah, it's quite surprising to know that China has a you know law against copyrights. Usually, they're responsible for making and creating copies and distributing them in the market. But yeah, probably it will be helpful if you read this. Okay. So yeah, we have come to the end of this particular module, and this slide actually summarizes it all. So in our day-to-day life, when in case of an evolving technology, what hacking tactics are there? What are vulnerabilities, and what possible threats and attack vectors are there? So what is the difference between a hacker and a cracker, and what kind of steps are performed as an ethical hacker? I've mentioned those. Then the various other laws, and most important point is that you need to use same tools and techniques as being used by hackers, and be ahead of them in the game. So that is it from my side.